Let's go.
Hi everybody, thank you for inviting me here. My name's Dawn Anderson. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the user is the query. Famous quote, "Today you are you, that is truer than true, there is no one alive who is youer than you," said Dr. Seuss, the author of The Cat in the Hat and various other things. And Google also said it fairly recently when they announced the Google feed, now Google Discover, recently renamed. Talking about the personal nature of the content that we want to see and how they were producing something that would produce personal content intended just for us and our individuality. So today's topic, the user is the query. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about what that means, because when you actually Google it, you don't find anything. So who am I? So I've been doing SEO for quite a long time. The figures are slightly wrong now. I lecture at the university and I'm a practitioner as well. I speak a fair bit, not so much this past year, because you can probably tell I've had laryngitis. It's going now, so I should be doing a bit more speaking soon. The most important thing about me is my dogs. Which if anybody knows me from Twitter, they'll constantly be bombarded with pictures of furry Pomeranians, Ted, and Bert. So if you want to connect, be warned. Okay, so there's a problem with queries, content, and users currently. So in 1998, the web consisted of just 25 million pages. Now that might sound a lot, but if you compare one web page to a page in a book, that's actually the equivalent of just a small library anywhere. So, and that's not me saying that, that's Google. So in 2019, we know that the web exploded massively. Can everybody hear me okay? Yep, okay. So there's literally now billions and billions of pages. So many pages, ridiculous. It's not just web pages that have exploded, informational-wise, it's app usage as well. You know, we're absolutely and utterly bombarded with apps everywhere, other than the fact that actually very few people use most of them. That said, the App Store now has 20 million registered developers. And 42% of the global population is connected to social media. So we're actually competing with programmatic content. You know, we have so many of these automated CRM systems that every 2 minutes, you know, I constantly try to get rid of all my emails, but more come in before I can actually get rid of them. So it's like an endless battle with information just flying at us from all angles. So we're overconnected and we have this information overload issue globally, if you like. And there's too much choice. There's a huge field called choice theory, and a lot of research goes into it. I actually studied it for my master's a few years ago and found that actually the more choice you have, the less you actually buy, because you have this issue with overchoice. Too many options, it becomes too much on cognitive load, and you just abandon, which is problematic because 98% of visits are just window shopping, the average e-commerce. Conversion rate, 2%, thereabouts. Despite this, users are still seeking more and more information out there. Part of the reason is because human nature is that we are bears. We're not really bears, but we behave like bears. It's called information foraging theory. Yeah, we forage, we root around, we go off in different directions, rummaging, doing a little bit of searching here, and then if the scent is good, we'll forage further, and if the scent goes cold, we'll leave. So we're informavores, if you like. We're researching all the things all the time, and obviously the user journey has just got longer and longer and longer now. For instance, this was recent research by Google into how many touch points somebody had before they bought a car, and it was 900. 900 things somebody did before they bought a car. Transversing lots and lots of different areas, different types of media, before ultimately it all narrowed down to a choice between two. And this again is choice theory. The number of Google searches goes up every year. This is according to Internet Live Stats. They've curated it from various sources and quotes. But ultimately, regardless of the figure, I think they said something like 40 million queries every, ridiculous amount of time. Either way, it's gone up every year. And 15% of queries are new every day. We know this from Google. So 15% of things have never, ever been seen before that people either say to Google or type into Google. And the thing is as well, we overall, and particularly Gen Z, there was a huge piece of research done that looked at Gen Z, which are the next generations coming through, which kind of are what matter to search. and IR and so forth. They've basically been brought up with all this information flying at them, so they've actually learned how to filter it out. You know, I don't know whether anybody saw that we were equated recently with goldfish, saying, hey, humans have a shorter attention span than goldfish. It turns out that that's not true. What it is we've actually developed an attention filter so that the filter is 8 seconds long. We do actually still find things interesting. Otherwise, we would not all binge for the whole weekend as soon as Stranger Things comes out. Yeah, we have attention that we'll give to things, but it has to be things that are actually interesting enough for us. This is a way we've managed and learned to manage cognitive load and filter out information intuitively. So at the same time as users and all the explosion of information, words are problematic too. Words are ambiguous, they're polysemous, and they're synonymous. So synonymous. So they have lots and lots of things that mean similar things, lots and lots of things that sound the same, etc., and lots of things that are literally exact duplicates. In spoken word, it's even worse because of the notion of homophones and prosody. So accents, intonation, ups and downs. You know, I mean, I've got an accent. I'm from Manchester. I'm hoping that you can understand me. But imagine being a search engine, voice search, trying to understand, a Glaswegian. Oh, I don't know whether anybody knows anybody from Glasgow, but they have a very strong accents, yeah. So it's a challenge. And homophones means this. I mean, I don't know whether you probably have never seen this comedy. It's a very famous British comedy called The Two Ronnies that ran for years and years. But I'm in France, and I know that some of you are Americans, so I'm probably the only person that's seen this. But anyway, a lot of their comedies that were very famous were very much based around words and playing on words. And there was this famous one about this shop where the guy goes in and says, do you have 4 candles? And somebody comes back with 4 candles, the candles that you light, but he wanted 4 candles to dig up his garden. So anyway, it's very famous. The point is, that's a homophone, yeah, and that is hard for search engines to understand. And this does not all bode well for conversational search, yeah, very hard, very challenging. The minute you switch out the English language as well, it becomes even more so, because obviously the vast majority of the web is built in English, yeah, even though it's not the largest population. So in query understanding, sometimes users don't actually know what they want either. They can't verbalise what they're trying to say. They don't know what something's called. And sometimes people use the exact same users express an information need in a different way. Yeah. So one day we'll think it's called this, the next day we'll call it that. And sometimes different users use lots of different ways to say exactly the same thing. Yeah, so it's very challenging. This is old. This is academic research by Susan Dumas, who's one of the chief researchers at Microsoft. She's been there for years now, which is really high up. I think she's like deputy managing director of Microsoft Research currently. This is from 1987. This is a piece of work, an academic paper called The Vocabulary Problem, when they realised, however much you try, there's no way no way you can align the way two people think about the same, what people think is a query that's the same, if that makes sense. So what they did is Susan Dumas and team, she was one of the inventors that created latent semantic indexing, which you'll hear a lot about in SEO, LSI. It's not used for what you think. It's not been used by Google ever. It was built by Belcore to basically align certain words that meant the same thing to get around the vocabulary problem. So it's not what you think. But the point is she's ahead of, quite a big noise in the search world. And you'll see her featured a lot in this talk. As I said, by the way, no one's ever said LSI was used by Google, whatever you see in those emails from strange SEOs. Okay, so often words also have multiple meanings, like. The word like has 5 potential parts of speech that it could possibly be, yeah. Sometimes the searcher query is a cold start query too, which is even more challenging. So they don't know who you are, they don't know where you are, you may be on, incognito mode, you've switched off location, they've got no search history, you're not on mobile, they're guessing at what you mean. And broad queries as well might actually call for result diversification when they spit out the search results, due to the fact that they don't understand what intent you have. So they might sometimes spit out a mixture of freshness, something that's fresh, serendipity results, something that's novel, something that's diverse. So they'll give you like a spray of different types of results, particularly if you have a broad query, result diversification, this is called. And the searcher then has to click around in providing clues. So the next click is actually what matters. This is query refinement. So they can then deliver sequential queries, sequential results based on what you've already fed back. That's the human in the loop. That's what it's called. It basically says your move next, backwards and forwards, helping you to find the right result based on you clicking around. And then it's almost like a role-playing game, maybe using something like Markov chains to actually work out the probability of if you go in this direction. You know, if you've ever played Sonic or you've played a role-playing computer game, the outcomes are always dependent on the choices that you make. And this is basically how result diversification in interactive information retrieval works. Yeah. Like this, related queries are actually a special kind of query refinement. So what they do is every year you look at them, there's usually 3 different types of search, 3 different types of information needs met in a set of related queries. 3 little different sections, that you could follow. It's almost like a kind of probability-driven fork in the road, and there's an academic paper to support that. But words, meaning, and users' intent, context are very hard still for search engines to understand, despite them having huge leaps forward in natural language understanding and query classification, particularly in the last 12 months since Google BERT. Google BERT is a model that Google put out on open source, which is absolutely massive, and it's exploded the world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and natural language understanding. Search engineers compete as well on these leaderboards to see who can beat human understanding of intent and queries and all these kind of things. They have things like this. This is the glue benchmark. That actually has been beaten so quickly now by Google BERT, they now had to bring out another one called superglue. So literally, just the speed at which things are progressing in terms of understanding is ridiculous in the past 12 months. This is another one, MS Marco. MS Marco is a question answering data set that Microsoft released on open source. It's actually real questions and answers from queries in Bing that they released, hundreds of thousands of them, And you wondered what was happening with all the questions out there in search, And this is another one, Squad. That's a Stanford question answering data set. But basically, they're all competing, and things are progressing very quickly. But time and space also has a huge impact, particularly on mobile, because the exact same queries have different meanings at different times and in different locations. So let's take the query Easter. Quite famous, actually, in the notion of query intent shift. Easter, a month or 2 months before Easter, people want to know when the date is, when it is. A few weeks before Easter, a couple of weeks before Easter, people want to know things to do. And then on the day of Easter Sunday, people want to know the meaning of it. This is query intent shift. Again, this is from a paper by these two, Susan DeMace and Kira Rudinsky in 2012. Kira Rudinsky is chief data scientist at eBay, Susan DeMace says at Microsoft. And this is what Rudinsky said in one of her papers. When users' information needs change over time, the ranking of results should also change to accommodate these needs. That's why rankings often change around things that have a temporal nature. This is query intent shift, so remember that. And your ranking flux may well be a result of that. Okay, here's an example. Richard from the train line. So sport and travel are a great example of this. Derbies, football derbies, Liverpool-Manchester. Liverpool-Manchester is normally a travel query. But actually, twice a year when the Manchester Derby in Liverpool comes on, it changes, so everything becomes about sport. So actually, this is, again, a predictable intent shift. So whenever there's derbies or football matches or anywhere around Europe, it follows this pattern. And again, there's John Mueller saying, look, realise that things change based on the intents of people at different times of day, the evening, etc. in that conversation. So don't always think there's a Google update. Sometimes it's just shifting intent and the search engine shifting in accordance with that. So also, this is just a thought. The mobile first index is built for mobile first, and mobile is probably extremely temporal, very location-based, very dynamic. So, maybe we're going to see a lot more shift than we used to do when it was based on desktop. That's just conjecture, my thoughts. And the passage of time as well adds new meaning to different words. Apple, orange, blackberry. You know, they're not just fruits, are they anymore? The rise and fall of the blackberry. Yeah. Black Friday. Everything becomes a transactional query on Black Friday. So everything shifts around. So expect it. And sometimes there's only reasons a particular audience might understand it. Here you go, 4 candles and 4 candles. Remember I talked about Ronnie Barker, the 2 Ronnies. So those 2 spikes are very significant. One's for 4 candles, one's for 4 candles. They're the deaths of these 2 comedians. Basically, unless you knew that that was what had happened, you would not be able to explain why that shift in Google Trends occurred. So Google Trends only tells us interest, not intent. So what a nightmare queries are when you look at all of that. Maybe it's time for a change. Enter the next 20 years of search that Google announced just a few months ago. I don't know, I think it was May, something like that. What they've said is improving search for the next 20 years. They've not made a big hoo-ha about this. It's massive. It's huge. They've said they're going to be fundamental shifts in the way search works for the next, that's massive. For the next 20 years, that's huge. 3 fundamental shifts in search, they've said. 1, the shift from answers to journeys. 2, the shift from queries to query-less. And 3, the shift from text to visual information. Well, the shift from text to visual information is really quite an easy one to explain. This is cognitive load management and information filtering, because people can consume images much more easily than they can text. You can look at a collection of images, immediately know what it's all about, very much more so. You know, it's that whole saying, a picture speaks 1,000 words, yeah. Images are mentally easier than text and audio. Images and video engage, images and video entertain, images and video provoke emotion and engagement and interaction. And also, if you look at app usage figures, photography and video and entertainment, app usage has massively skyrocketed. The interest is there. This is Gen Z's way of doing things, yeah. So massively, images are very important. Obviously, as well, images are not treated the same as search in that they are not mined because they don't have words. But there are increases in machine learning now, and some recognition of what's in the images obviously has made it a lot easier. Plus, the images are curated as well. People spend on average 2.6 times more on pages with video, and image search, as I say, is not the same as web ranking. It's curation, collections, you know, it's easier to manage, etc. Sorry about all the Pomeranian pictures there. But the thing is with images, I'm not going to go into how to optimize for images or how to take advantage of this. There's loads of stuff out there. For me, think accessibility first, and you can't go far wrong with images because it's all about alt tags, captions, files, file names, descriptions. And there's not much you can do wrong if you think accessibility, yeah. So I'm not going to label a point with that. Point is, go nuts with quality images and video, yeah. Actually, that's a real picture of my dogs in a shopping trolley. The DIY store said, you can't bring dogs in, you've got to pick them up. So we put them in the trolley. Anyway, okay, so as I said, that feels like a huge UX issue, yeah. So what about the switch to journeys and queryless? Well, this is the big deal for me. Again, Susan Demes, keep going back to this lady, she's massive. It's easier if you can model who is asking, what they have done in the past, where they are, when it is, etc. Because queries in isolation are very challenging. And that was only 2-3 years ago. Obviously, research just is a little bit behind, but it's ahead, if you see what I mean. It's behind in terms of actual implementation, but it's always ahead in the way that they're thinking, yeah? So it's a bit like listening on the radio to the football and watching it on the telly. There's always like a little slight delay. And that's what she said it in response to. Queries are difficult to understand in isolation. The cold start query is very challenging. And then what she's basically saying is, look, we need to know where they are, what they're doing, who, you know, what location are they in, etc. We need context. So this is contextual search. User plus time plus location plus device plus task. Better still, what about predicting the user's informational needs to proactively make suggestions? And this is research by Song and Guo. They're part of the Microsoft research team. This is what they said, and I literally have taken this because I didn't want to misquote it. What they said is, nevertheless, as the world is becoming more mobile-centric, this old-fashioned query-driven search scenario and click-based evaluation mechanism can no longer catch up with the rapid evolution of user demand on mobile devices. Therefore, a more user-friendly, mobile-centric and scenario-driven search paradigm that requires minimal user inputs is ready to come out. This is queryless search. Zero query queries, no query required. Okay, and this is basically a paper that just stood the test of time. Massive paper. 2017, it won what they call the SIG-IR, Search Special Interest Group and Information Retrieval paper for standing the test of time. It was basically looking at how to personalise search based on activities and interests. And this is the paper that I quoted Song from. Next-gen proactive search and recommender engines, yeah. It kind of sounds a little bit like Google Discover, doesn't it? And then when at last Google announced Google Discover was being picked up, they said they had 800 million users. That was May 2018. That was before they actually put it on the homepage of the mobile browser. So if anybody actually logs into Gmail or any Google product and looks on their mobile device now at the Google homepage, you'll start to see personalisation coming through. And it actually is pretty spot on. It knows you. It knows where you're going, where you've been, what you're interested in. It ties in with your calendar. Look, it knows I'm going to Vegas next week. It knows I have a motorhomes client. It knows I look on motorhomes web pages. It knows I live in Manchester and I fly a lot. Yeah. It knows I'm into SEO. Yeah. This is like Spotify's homepage. This is like Netflix's homepage. This is Google becoming a recommender engine. No surprise, because, for instance, the mobile device has like 14 sensors. And this is the user needs. The user task is the query. Yeah. This is TaskDriven Search and recommender systems. Okay, here's some other of Google's recommender systems. YouTube, Google Discover, and Assistant. And Scholar, Google Scholar, now becoming a recommender system. Last Saturday, I think I was in a test for this because I've not been able to see it since. Basically, I went on the Google Scholar homepage because I get a lot of my stuff from Google Scholar. Found recommended researchers for me to follow based on my profile and my current alerts. That is a recommender system. They even explained why. And as I say, the queryless thing as well. It's all recommender systems. So this is what Song also said. The reason why they think that this is like the future, patterns were spotted about repetitive task-driven search behaviours, predictable things that people do. So if, for instance, you're interested in the stock market, chances are at 10 o'clock every morning, you're probably going to check the stock market. Yeah. If you're interested in football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, when the football's on, you're probably going to want to know what the scores are, etc. So predictable task timeline patterns are more prevalent on mobile devices. Yeah, because people do lots and lots of tiny things at certain times. We're creatures of habit, yeah? And in many cases, predicting informational needs removes the need for the query and a reactive search engine. It's like, hey, we know what you want. You don't even have to ask us. So Google Discover looks to be focusing on hobbies, interests, news and social activities. I asked on Twitter, quite a few people replied, some from the BBC even, some from big e-commerce sites. You know, a lot of it was around hobbies, interests, you know, news, sport, recipes, cooking. When British Bake Off is on, loads and loads of recipe pages get discovered. An information need, you see, is rarely a task with a single finite item. When we book a holiday now, we don't sit down, take half a day out and book a holiday. You know, we literally do bits of research all the while. When we're sat in the bus or wherever, yeah. And as I say, there you go. It's all series of small chunks of tiny, small tasks. We're leading agile lives, yeah. So tasks and timelines go hand in hand. Sorry, I'm flying through it quickly. Yeah. I've got 200 slides. So many tasks and intents can be modelled. They can model it, you see. It's all about modelling, yeah. Here's some very recent Microsoft research. Understanding context for tasks and activities. All these papers are publicly available. And the ideal, obviously, is personalisation. They want to know you. They want to know everything about you. But it's very challenging because it's not easy to achieve fully. There's a sparsity of data, there's GDPR, there's privacy concerns, there's broken sequences. Sometimes you go off and make a cup of tea and leave 50 tabs open on your desktop computer for a month. That's what I do. In the absence of personalisation, though, there's this thing called collaborative filtering. Because there are other people nearly like you. Because you and me are unique, but we may be similar. Cohort analysis. This is called using matrix factorization. Netflix uses it. And Google's TensorFlow talks about building a recommender system using what they call the walls algorithm. Again, it's a form of matrix factorization. It literally is this. You have a grid. On one side you have the users. The other side you have the interests. It basically works out the probability of if A, B, and C person like X, Y, and Z, then the chances are they're also going to like G and H, yeah? And it fills in the gaps based on probability, increasingly getting more and more intelligent, more and more clever. It knows that if you like football, you like Manchester United, you live in, etc. It knows that if you like football and you live in Manchester, the chances are you're going to either like Manchester City or Manchester United. That kind of thing. But it builds intelligence over time, yeah. And it's based also on the likes of other people with hidden similar preferences. So, Google Topics. It knows if you like X, Y, and Z in topics, the probability of you starting to like X, Y, and Z, like other people, a cohort analysis, yeah. Understand the user cohort, understand other similar things that they like as well. Be able to recommend things. As I said, I've just mentioned topics. It's modeling cohorts. So advances in machine learning as well have actually made this explode. Reinforcement learning, it thrives from implicit feedback. So the more you press yes, the more it actually learns. It's called contextual bandit algorithms, and they're massive in this field now of recommender system. Basically, it works out, what's the probability of somebody liking that? And it actually, the more you feed it with rewards, the rewards are liking or saving or etc. Like YouTube here. If I save something in YouTube, it gives me more of the same thing. This is a contextual bandit algorithm in operation. It's a human in the loop, providing implicit feedback, yeah? Either interacting with something I've not had to ask. I know that because I look at lots of videos on matrix factorization, I'm going to get more videos on matrix factorization. It's not rocket science, but it goes back and forth because obviously, Google then takes stuff from search. Things I've searched on come up in videos. It's progressive personalization. It's a kind of a form of CRM. And it's all going towards a personal knowledge graph. Two sides of the assistant, Google's assistant as well, will become integrated with this. And also, if you take it beyond phones and beyond search and realise that search goes outside of that and into things like Google Assistant on your phone and your Google Home, you can extend actions now on Google using machine learning. So developers can build this. This is a task-driven intent path that potentially somebody who's got a hotel booking site can build. But their developers are invited to add all the little steps that are involved, all the possible questions somebody could ask, the different paths somebody could take. In other words, Google say, hey, tell us all the tasks in order and the steps that are involved in booking a hotel. Task-driven search. Lots and lots of other intents are coming through as well. Order tea, order a pizza. Yeah, connections between things. And multi-platforming, people going back and forth between YouTube, Discover, Search, etc. Connecting. Calendars. Again, calendars. I said to my Google Assistant, I told it who my husband is. When I say, hey Google, who's my husband? He'll say, hey, your husband's John Anderson. Hey, who's my mum? It knows. It's about building out this whole personal knowledge graph. This is Christian Ballog, professor in information retrieval from Norway. He just spent a year on a sabbatical working at Google on their conversational systems and assistant. He's very well respected in the space of personal entity-driven search. He's got a brilliant book, you should get it, it's free, called Entity-Oriented Search, and he's very well known. And basically he says, truly personal AI is not possible without a personal knowledge graph. That means joining up all these dots. As I say, I've shown you about that. And as I said, here's a recent Microsoft patent on building a personal knowledge graph. Hey, surprise. Okay, so it's literally all of this tied together. Gmail, calendar, location, assistant, home, discover, search. You know, it's like this whole rounded in your car. You know, loads of cars now are adding assistant. Just announced. This is like only 2 or 3 days old. In your gaming console, Microsoft and Google have teamed up to add Google Assistant to your Xbox. That was a few days old. Yeah. These are just carriers as well for the recommender system, just ways of reaching us. And the user there is truly the query. Because the more that they are all around you, the more they can recommend things towards an audience of one from an audience of many. So what can we do about this? Well, it's very challenging. We have to realise for a start, based on similar to like the back of the conversation that you all had on the panel, realise that a lot of the time, your ranking tools are mostly wrong. Yeah. There's going to be all sorts of other elements involved, location, personalisation, etc. And identify interests, affinity groups. You know that section in Google that says, hey, interests and cohort analysis and all that carry on, which we all ignore? Well, we should actually start looking in there and realising the interests of our audience. Understand information foraging behaviour. Don't presume that people are automatically going to go for the transaction. Okay. Understand the path beforehand. Map every single informational need you can think of, subtask, to sections of something like the race model, reach, act, convert, engage, yeah. And build task timeline clusters. Cluster together in your related content, not around categories, around tasks. Think about the tasks that the user's looking to do. You know, and think about timing and context as well. What's the point of showing somebody something for, you know, Star Wars 5 when they've not seen any of them? Contextual order matters. And instead of continually creating more content, just make what you've got better. Because in Discover, it seems it's high quality content that's being recommended. Evergreen content, work on that. You know, keep making it better, but keep it updated, keep it current, keep it accurate. And improve on seasonal, temporal content. You know, I see a lot of people pruning stuff because somebody's not visited in 6 months, but then I look at it and it's like, well, that's a Halloween page and it's March. So, you know, common sense must prevail. Map content clearly to tasks and timelines and really exploit the local opportunity. Because obviously we know that mobile is massive for local. Here's some actions that you can publish your content on as well. So start digging into conversational actions because it's all tied together. Think CRM for SEO. It's about identification of patterns. So the queryless change will not come overnight. You know, things always move much more slowly. Google are being a bit tight-lipped about it. They're not even releasing, they've only released figures once in like a year and a bit on how many people are using Google Discover. But, you know, people are saying, oh, it's 10% of organic search on massive websites. So it's clearly going up. Takeaways, all those things I've said, yeah. You know, mapping optimizing the images, going big on the evergreen content, having these hero pieces, building just quality content mapped to user timelines, thinking more CRM than SEO, but doing it together. And then, you know, as I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but the point is, a bit like Tom said about the frogs boiling in a bucket, the point is to just prepare. Be prepared, be aware, this is down the pipeline, and think about how you can integrate it into your strategy. I think that's it. I think I've timed that hopefully reasonably well. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah.